Hi. Hi. Uh, it's Tell me your names.
Beatrice Noble.
I'm sorry. Could you say that?
Beatrice Noble.
Agnes?
No, ma'am. No, sir. Beatrice Noble.
Oh, Beatrice. Beatrice. Yes.
Okay. Annie Shaw.
Nice to see you this morning. And it's Frank, is it?
Frank Byrne.
Pardon me?
Frank Byrne.
Frank. Right. And I'm Barry. I'm still Barry. Um, so a beautiful morning, right? A beautiful day in Berkeley and here in Richmond. And it's through the wonder of communication devices that we can speak to each other around the world today. It's pretty amazing. I could have people in India or Moscow or China. Pretty amazing. The world is turning today as it has been for 4.5 billion years. Light and dark. The seasons are changing. You may have noticed already the light has changed from a month ago. Every day there's a little less light, about 4 minutes less now, as we move towards September. The days grow short when we reach September. Remember that song? And so this Earth and the rest of the planets are moving about the sun in their orbits as they have for millions of years, billions of years. Isn't it amazing that they are held in their orbits? What would happen if the Earth decided to do something different and move out away from the sun or move closer to the sun? It's pretty astounding that we have such a stable situation. I am told that the moon is actually moving away from the Earth very slightly every year, but so slightly it would take millions and millions of years to make a difference. But eventually, we think the moon will move away from the Earth. And that won't be so good because the moon is a very important part of holding the Earth in a steady orbit. The Earth's orbit would be more erratic without the moon. Isn't that interesting? Um, we might have a difference in the climate without the moon. It might be more severe, hotter in the summer, colder in the winter. So we are thankful for the moon for many different reasons. Another reason the moon is important is the tides. The tides bring oxygenated water. That is water that's refreshed with oxygen for all the living things that are born near the shore, in the wetlands that surround the coasts. And so the tides, which are are made by the moon, are really important, and not just water that moves in and out. Um, any questions or comments? And speaking of water, here I have a glass of water, and every day we need to have water, right? and water is the basis for life. How interesting is that? Water, without water, there would be no life. Water is almost a kind of magic ingredient that enables all the processes of life to go on. And water even enters those processes, I should say, and makes those things possible. The proteins in our body, for example, are made of amino acids, which are carbon-based structures that have hydrogen on one side of them and oxygen on the other. And the way they are joined together is to remove one of those hydrogens and oxygens, and in the process form water. So all of our proteins are stuck together by removing water from one side of the amino acid or the other. And that's pretty amazing. Many of the digestive processes also need water. As soon as you take some food in, the water is beginning to work on that food to break it apart, to dissolve it, and make it ready for all the processes, why don't I say processes that are going on that are part and parcel of a very highly complex system that depends on water. Any questions or comments? The earth is covered by water. In fact, most of the earth is water. The oceans make up about 70% or more of the earth's surface. And some people have suggested that we should call this planet water or ocean rather than earth, since there's more of it. We don't know how water came to the earth. Interestingly, some scientists think it was here in the beginning, that it was part of the rocks and part of the time when the earth was formed. Others think that it came here on comets, and it's been discovered that comets are to a large part ice, frozen water. Our scientists have now found vast amounts of ice crystals in space, whole oceans of ice crystals that are just floating free in space at great distances. So water seems part and parcel of the whole universe, of the whole cosmos. And it makes you wonder whether water is making life possible on other places, other planets that are many in our universe. What do you think? Do you think there might be life on other worlds?
Yeah.
Yes, possible? Yes. I think so too. I think that we might be in a community of life that we haven't yet contacted, but we will when we're ready, I think. So the Earth, the stars, the planets are all part of a great mystery, a great wonder. How is it that the Earth and the stars and all the planets How is it that they exist? Why should they exist? Why should anything exist? One of the oldest questions that humans have asked is, why should anything exist? Why should there be something rather than nothing? That's quite a question, isn't it? Many people say that that the universe came out of nothing, that the universe arose some 14 billion years ago out of nothing. And that, for me, that's a very difficult proposition, because as the universe formed, it formed a very defined structure, the atoms and molecules. In the first second of time, the atoms and molecules appeared. And those were already very complicated and made of many different parts and structures. And they were able to lay down the foundation for what came later, namely stars and planets and all the elements that make up this world and life. And that's very extraordinary, don't you think, that the atoms should come about in the first moment of time? So you could say, what came before the universe? Was there another universe before our universe? I think it's possible. I think there may have been many universes, out of which this universe finally arrived. And the universe, like life, may be a kind of evolutionary thing, an evolutionary entity, you might say. Something that can change over time and grow and become, like the flowers of the fields. 135 million years ago, the first flowers appeared. There were dinosaurs at that time, but no bees and no ants and no wasps. Those came later as the flowers developed and spread out onto the world. Here I have this. This is a lovely peach. A lovely peach that is the product of a flowering tree. Most of the food we get comes from flowering plants or flowering trees. Even something like lettuce becomes a flowering plant. Have you ever had a garden or a farm? Have you lived on a farm or had a garden? Beatrice?
Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
I lived on a large farm.
A little farm?
Large farm. 20 acres of land.
I gotta turn up my sound. I can't hear you.
I lived on a large farm.
A large farm. What did you grow on the farm?
Cotton, corn. We had, my mother had a large garden. Cabbage, tomatoes.
Tomatoes,
Cabbage and tomatoes.
Oh, that's nice. And did you grow them for other people as
No,
well as?
I didn't grow them for
Mhm. So you had um, a large farm. Did you have animals too on the farm?
No.
Just crops.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so you are very familiar with the way things grow
Yes.
and the miracle of plants coming up from the soil.
Yes.
Um, and we're learning more and more about plants and how they relate to the soil and how they relate to the sun. And everything seems to be completely tied together, right? How amazing is that? That the plant needs the soil and needs the sun and needs the water and even the air, and everything is tied together. So it has been said that the piece of toast on your plate in the morning is a combination of many, many things: the sun, the air, the water, the earth itself. All things are dependent on everything else. If the earth, if the sun didn't shine, there would be no life, right? If we didn't have water, there would be no life. If there wasn't the air, there would be no life. All these things interconnect and make this world possible. We still don't understand what life is. We still don't understand why life exists. We know a lot about it now, but we don't know what the why of it. And I think that's very interesting. How did life arise from the dust of the planet? How did life arise from sunlight and air and water? Any questions? It's good to ask questions. It's good to question the universe, question our existence, question all things as they exist. You know, everything is a kind of miracle. Everything is a wonder. The chair we're sitting on is a wonder. Why should it be solid? We sort of take it for granted that we live in a world of solidity, that we can walk across a solid floor, that we can open a door, that we can put our clothes in a cabinet, and everything has a certain density to it, a weight to it. But scientists are saying more and more there's not really much there as we understand what um, uh, what matter is. I was looking at some videos this week and on um, science, and the people are now saying, the scientists are saying that the world is basically made of energetic waves that we can't see or touch or except for light. But in the main, the world is now thought of as being made of energetic waves. That there really are no little parts or particles to speak of. That these parts seem to appear when we when we think about the world. The parts seem to appear. It's very mysterious. Um, 2,500 years ago, a fellow by the name of Democritus in Greece said that everything was made of tiny, tiny particles. He called them, what did he call them? What do you think? He called them atoms. Atoms, right? And he said that these atoms were uncuttable, that they were the smallest of things, and they couldn't be separated anymore or divided. And so the word atom comes from uncuttable, and he was right to a certain extent, but because we now know the world is made of a structure that is infinitesimally small and unseen and very difficult to comprehend. This is the world of the atoms, which now scientists are saying are not like little particles like Democritus thought. They're waves, like waves on water. And how a wave on the water can make a chair, I don't know. Or the floor beneath our feet, or our shoes. It's really remarkable that there is anything solid in the world. So we're living in a world in which there is a mysterious something that out of which the whole world comes from or arises. And we still don't know how that works, how that happens. And so it's just another one of the great mysteries. Another mystery is how the atoms come together and make life. How things like hydrogen and oxygen form water. And you wonder why that is, why that could be, or that hydrogen and oxygen and carbon can form sugar, which is the basis of the energy that life needs. We live on sugars for our energy, and these sugars are just made of simple ingredients: hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. But it is not simple to put them together. Human beings haven't learned how to create sugar out of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen yet. But plants have been doing that for billions of years. And that's most extraordinary, don't you think? That a plant can take water and air and in the presence of sunlight create sugars and use those sugars for its growth and to feed other animals, such as humans. It's quite extraordinary the way the universe works. It's like who designed it? Now the traditional answer to that has been God, right? And I think that's as good as answer as we have. Um, let's see. Let's see. Here's a passage from Walden by Henry David Thoreau. He wrote this more than 100 years ago when life was quieter, simpler. He writes, and you might have some experience similar to this. After hoeing, or perhaps reading and writing in the afternoon, I usually bathed again in the pond, swimming across one of its coves for a stint, and washed the dust of labor from my person, and smoothed out the last wrinkle which study had made, and for the afternoon was absolutely free. Every day or two I strolled to the village to hear some of the gossip which is incessantly going on there, circulating either from mouth to mouth or from newspaper to newspaper, and which, taken in homeopathic doses, was really as refreshing in its way as the rustle of leaves and the peeping of frogs. As I walked in the woods to see the birds and squirrels, so I walked in the village to see men and boys. Instead of the wind among the pines, I heard the carts rattle. In one direction from my house, there was a colony of muskrats. In the river, under the grove of elms and buttonwoods, in the other horizon, that was a village of busy men, as curious to me as if they had been prairie dogs, each sitting at the mouth of its burrow, or running over to a neighbor to gossip. I went there frequently to observe their habits. So I think that's a lovely passage, and it points out how Thoreau was interested in everything, not just the birds and the trees and the water, the muskrats, but he was interested in people as well as creatures, as part of nature. Um, and I think that's quite interesting. We're all part of nature. Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think we're above nature and we have the right to do what we please on the earth. But more and more, I think people are beginning to understand our connectivity with the world, with the universe, and how we need to go more gently on the earth, to treat it better, and to be more a part of it than above it. What do you think? Does that make sense to you? I'm going to have a drink right now. So this water could have been part of a camel, or part of a dinosaur, or part of the Queen of Sheba, or Napoleon. We don't know. Water circulates through everything, and becomes a part of the everything, and leaves again, and circulates and becomes. And this water may be very ancient, and certainly the hydrogen in the water is from the earliest time of the universe. As far as we know, there has been no more hydrogen created, so that the hydrogen part of this water is almost 14 billion years old. That's pretty extraordinary. Um, the oxygen came later. The oxygen was made in stars. As the stars formed, they made the heavier elements. In the beginning, there was only hydrogen and helium, and maybe a little bit of lithium, but no oxygen, no nitrogen, no carbon. So you couldn't have life. You couldn't have had life then. In the early universe, you could only have stars and maybe gas planets. There was no iron. There was no silicon, which is mostly what the Earth is made of, and oxygen. So the universe would have been very different in the beginning, and it was only over hundreds of millions of and years that the stars made the heavier elements, such as oxygen and nitrogen and carbon, and those elements were thrown out into the universe again as the stars died and regrouped to make new stars and new planets where you could have a world like the Earth. Now that the world, that the universe was full of these new elements that made all these that made the Earth and other worlds possible. So from that, you could say that the universe is an ongoing process, that it's not something that was done in all at once. And even if you go to the Bible, the universe is not made in one day, right? It's made in 6 days, and the universe certainly was made over time, long periods of time, um, and we don't know where the universe is going next, what the universe will produce, um, what sort of intelligence might come out of the universe in time. The great scientist and theologian Teilhard de Chardin thought that our intelligence would one day develop and merge with the larger intelligence, as he put it, of the universe. That's an interesting idea, no? All right. Um, I'm going to leave you with that. I hope you've enjoyed today's class. Um, and I hope you will be um, asking questions. And that's really the whole thrust of this class is to ask questions. Have a wonderful afternoon. I'm very happy to see you today, and I'm very happy that you were in the class. And I hope you'll be well, and we'll see you next time. So thank you. Thank you. Be well, take care. So I'm gonna press leave now, and have a good day. Have a good day, everybody. Let's see. I don't see any workers. Hope they're going out. Oh, okay. All right.